So here we are with another episode of the We United podcast. And I'm super excited to be here today with Andrea Palmer from TTI. Thank you for being here, Andrea.
Hey, Jackie. Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Yay, me too. I appreciate you taking the time. I know that you are so busy as Vice President of Legal and Compliance, so I'm sure you have a very busy schedule. So taking the time today is very much appreciated.
No, really happy to be part of this group and share my thoughts and just see where the conversation takes us today.
All right. Well, let's just start. I will just let you kind of introduce yourself. We just said what your title is, but tell us a little bit of background about yourself. How did you get to TTI? Just give us a little flavor before
Yeah.
the interview.
Yeah. So, my title, like you said, VP of Legal and Compliance. I'm an attorney. I act as corporate counsel on a global level for TTI, as well as for our subsidiaries, our different business units around the globe. I handle everything from contracts to data privacy to just regulatory compliance. It's a really fun, really challenging role. Been in this role coming up on 7 months now and really enjoyed it. My background's kind of been all over the place. I started my career doing aviation litigation, was traveling all over the United States, going to court, going to hearings. That was fun, but it wasn't my favorite thing. I moved to a corporate counsel role at an insurance brokerage, really focused on compliance, regulatory compliance, enjoyed that a lot. Came to TTI through a connection. The brokerage I worked for actually used to be the brokerage that serviced TTI. And so I knew TTI's chief administrative officer, John Archer. We stayed in contact after they moved to a different broker. And the time was right. I was open to a new opportunity. They needed a VP of legal compliance, and it was just perfect timing.
Awesome. Well, okay, so I have a couple questions for you. So you said it you mentioned you were in the aerospace industry, right?
Yeah.
And insurance, two different industries. So what was the most challenging in those industries compared to this industry and the electronic component? We're talking about the electronic component space.
Yeah, I think what I'm doing now is the most challenging part of my career I've had, but I like that. That's what I was looking for, was something that was going to be a new challenge, something exciting and challenging. Um, Litigation, you have to know the rules, you have to draft things, you have to follow the timelines. It can be a little prescribed. I found insurance to be a lot more interesting. I enjoyed reading the different regulations, making sure that everything we did was in compliance. And you've got your insurance regulations, data privacy, uh, consumer disclosures. So I took that knowledge, both the sort of risk management knowledge I had from litigating for years, and then the compliance knowledge I gained working in insurance. And that all really perfectly fit into TTI, the electronic components industry, as all of us know, heavily regulated. And you've got the regulations around parts and shipping and trade compliance and export control, data privacy, now AI regulation. That's so much of my day right now, is understanding what these regulations are, how they affect us, and how we can stay compliant, move forward with our business, be flexible, be agile. Every day I wake up, I find out a new challenge, a new way to support our team, and it's been really fun and really exciting.
Oh, it's funny because I think when people think of law, they think of kind of the not so great parts of law that you would think of, right? All that compliance, it just all seems like, oh, but there's so much strategy to what I've learned from we is my our legal strategy has helped us to be is really help with the growth of the
Yeah.
organization, protecting the organization, but the business strategy gets linked in quite a bit with the law. So what do you have to say about the strategy part? I'm so curious about that.
Yeah. You know, Everything we do these days has some sort of regulatory component. And one of the things I found to be a guiding light for all of that is just really practicing with ethics, with intentionality. A lot of the regulation in place, some of it can be very challenging, but a lot of it is in place from a point of protecting consumers, protecting interests. So I try to approach it with that mindset. TTI is such a compliant, such an ethical culture. It's so baked into our leadership, our founder, the Berkshire Hathaway component of it all. When I look at these regulations, I look at what our team is trying to do. I ask, what's our goal here? Long term, what are we trying to solve for? What business challenge are we trying to rise to meet? Where do we see ourselves with this process or this product in 5, 10, 20 years? And I tell the team a lot, my goal is not to tell you, no, the law says you can't do that, right? My goal is to say, what are we trying to do? How can I educate you about what regulation applies to what we're doing? How can we structure ourselves to be compliant with the regulation that's in place now, but also be flexible and agile so that as regulation changes in the future, we are ready to pivot and we're ready to comply. And this, the time and the effort we've spent building processes, building services, that time and effort is protected because we've been so intentional thinking about how do we ensure compliance with regulation throughout the globe? How do we ensure this process that's been so valuable to our customers is still going to be available and still going to be compliant?
Wow, that's an amazing answer. I love that answer. And that's part of why TTI is successful, is because it is, you mentioned ethics. So as we're moving forward with We United, it's leadership with civility, ethics, and humanity. And so I love that you mentioned ethics, because I do think, and when I interviewed Mike Morton on his podcast, he said, or my podcast, I interviewed him, and he said something that I thought was so basic, but so refreshing to hear a leader say. And that was just like, basic kindness is so undervalued these days.
Yeah,
But when you have leaders that care about all these things, that care about, the compliance, that care about everything,
yeah,
and how you deliver it and how you bring your product to market is so critical to
yeah,
an organization.
yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Yes. So when we start having that leadership conversation, so obviously you're having to be in a leadership role in this organization. You're having to get a lot done. And, so I'm so curious. I love talking to leaders and getting different perspectives on things. You are not the typical demographic for your role, which is very refreshing, I have to say. We have a lot
I like it, obviously.
Yes,
I like who I am.
that is a really good thing. So let's start with that though. Give me the perspective and give us, our audience, the perspective of somebody in a non-traditional role in this industry. What is your take on this? What do you see as, we'll start with that. And then how do you compare it with other industries and what you've seen there? So I'll just let you do part one first.
Yeah. So part role, thinking about leadership coming from the perspective of, like you said, I'm a woman. I'm uh, probably still a little earlier in my career than some people might be. I've worked very hard to get where I am today. Um, and how do you be a leader in that position? How do you perhaps overcome some ideas or stereotypes about what you should be or
Yeah.
how you should present? One of the things that I always tell other up and coming leaders, other people starting their careers, is it's so important to be a principled leader and to really stand on your convictions and know what those are. I think that for those of us who are women, and extending that to women of color, people who might not have a gender identity or presentation that's traditional, when we aren't fitting that stereotypical mold, we know we're going to enter into some conversations or situations that might be uncomfortable, or people might have assumptions about us. And so how do we enter into those, being professional, being ready for it? I think preparedness is really important for me and always has been in my roles. um, Knowing that there might be a vendor, there might be an outside party, there might be somebody at a networking event who has assumptions about me, my role, what I should look like or act like or be. And I'll game plan with other leaders that come from my background. How do we react in that situation? If somebody tells a joke, are we going to just laugh it off? Are we going to just try to move on? For me, I've always been such a principled person and I've always really stood on my convictions. If I hear something that isn't striking me the right way, isn't respectful of myself, or isn't respectful of the people around me, I might say, hey, that's not really funny, or that's kind of an odd thing to say. Let's move on with that. Um, I think it's so important to know what you're going to say and how you're going to say it when you get into those challenging circumstances, right? Because it is going to happen. And thinking positively about, those things are going to happen. How can you set yourself up for success when you don't look the part of somebody from Mad Men in a leadership position, right? You're not walking around in a three-piece suit. um, it's so important to look for bosses and for executive leadership who's really going to be supportive of everybody, no matter what their background, whether that's educational, religion, however they present. That might not look like a stereotypical leader. You want to find those organizations with that leadership. And I've definitely found that here at TTI. You want to find bosses who are going to support you, who see you for your education, your experience, the things that you're able to bring to the organization. You want to look for those sponsors. We talk about sponsorship a lot in our world. How do you find people who are going to champion you, who are going to put you in front of other people? I've been so fortunate. Every organization I've been in my career, I have had those champions, those sponsors ahead of me who are in positions of leadership who say, Andrea is really good at what she does. She has the skills that we need. She's professional. She's going to handle every challenge that comes her way with an open mind and with polish, and she's not going to get off course. But I'm still principled, right? I'm not going to let somebody act in a way that might not respect everybody in the room. I think when you look for those qualities in other leaders, and when you present those qualities, people really start to trust you and say, hey, this is somebody who is going to meet me where I am, for who I am, for what I can do on this team, and not for check boxes of what we think somebody in this position might need to look like, right? Let's look at the person and what they're bringing, and let's treat everybody with respect. I know that I treat everyone that way. I know that my leadership treats everyone that way. And so I know I can expect that for everybody else on my team. And I can really show them it's okay to expect that, and it's okay to look for organizations that support that, and to be happy when you are, like I am here at TTI, in an organization that is so supportive and really does value respect and different points of view.
Oh my goodness, that was such an amazing answer. I really like that
I
a
feel like I
lot.
kind of went long, but there's so much I'd
Yeah,
like to say
I
about that topic.
love that answer. I do want to circle back on a couple things with it.
Yeah,
Okay, so I love that you said look for the right bosses. Okay, so everybody listening, write that down because I think we spend a lot of time, maybe see like who will hire me or how will I get promoted or whatever. I remember when I had one of my very first jobs at Macy's, and the hiring manager happened to be one of our family friends, and she was just, really solid woman. She was treating me the same as everyone else, but she said to me before the interview, you go into this interview and you interview the interviewer. You make sure that you
yeah,
want to be working at this organization, that you will dedicate your time, effort, and skills to this person and this organization. You should always know that it's a mutual interview. So that's why I love you said that, because how many people are actually going out and looking for and interviewing who they
yeah.
want to go work for? That's
Absolutely.
amazing.
And I can't say enough great things about, my boss here at TTI, John Archer, Chief Administrative Officer. Like I said, I'd worked with him before. I knew that he was great to work with, really smart, challenging, had high expectations. And when I was interviewing for this role and meeting other people, just everybody in the organization would talk about what a great person he was, how supportive he was, how helpful he was. And it's so important, like you said, Jackie, interview your interviewer. Make sure that you're going to partner well with that person. Make sure they're going to champion your ideas, that they're going to give you backup and support, that they're going to give you guidance and tell you, hey, I see where you're going, but that's not going to work. Or here's a better way to approach this problem from our culture or from our history or from our goals. So I've tried to really look for that in my bosses throughout my career, people who are going to challenge me, are going to help me grow my skill set and my expertise, help me grow as a leader, and who are going to be supportive of the ideas that I bring to the table, the innovations that I bring to the table, And again, people are going to look and say, I'm looking for people with an amazing skill set who are here to get work done. I'm not looking for somebody who looks like a VP of legal, right?
You mentioned courage and being able to sit in a room and actually call out behavior, not in a very professional way.
Yeah.
I mean, there, that to me rings so critical and important to me, because I think we're in a time where we need people to do that. We
Yeah.
need people, leaders. It doesn't matter what level people are. It seems like that courageous leadership is a little bit lacking in so many organizations, because it seems like leaders get a little bit like
Mhm.
not wanting to hurt somebody else's feelings,
Mhm.
instead of saying all the critical important things that need to be said and nipping things. So I love that you said that. So if you're in a meeting and somebody says something inappropriate,
Yeah.
why do people sit around and say nothing? You could nip it very professionally and
Always
move on.
always professionally, and I think that can be something that particularly, women and non-traditional gender identities can have a harder time with, because we don't want to be seen as the problem. We don't want to be seen as sensitive. We don't want to be seen as derailing the meeting. But to me, that respect that everybody in the room is owed is so important. And so sometimes I think, if I'm going to let something like this slide, what example am I creating for the people around me about respect and about how to treat people? And that goes in so many levels. I always train people on my team that if you are having an interaction with, an outside party, with a vendor, and it isn't going well, they aren't being respectful, they're angry, they're trying to railroad you and tell you the way the world has to be, you are owed in any job respect, regardless of what your role is. And you don't need to continue in that type of engagement if it isn't a respectful engagement. Just because it's a job doesn't mean that you have to be treated with disrespect. I treat
Uh,
everybody on my team with respect. I demand that they treat people with respect. Um, and again, at a place like TTI, it's really good because that is such a part of the culture. It's very flat, doors are open, you can really talk with everybody. But that type of culture is only sustainable if leaders and if people in my role and people in executive leadership are willing to stand up and be principled when things aren't going right, when people aren't treating people with respect. And sometimes that's not internal, sometimes it's customers, sometimes it's consultants,
yeah.
sometimes it's people at networking events. In all of our professional endeavors, it's so important that we can expect to be treated with respect and that we require the people around us treat everyone with respect.
Well, I think TTI has a good track record for that. And I think I told Mike, TTI was one of my very favorite distributors to work with when I was in the rep world, just because I always got that respect from anybody at any branch.
Yeah,
There's something about the
absolutely.
culture and the leadership. They're just very high class, very good people over there. So you do have a really good organization. Okay, so I also wanted to ask you, since we're on this conversation, so one of the things I think that we see a lot of is having tough conversations.
Hmm.
So if we're moving into this part of it, obviously you might have a little more skill being having that legal background. I don't know, but I think that is really helpful for women leaders in particular, all leaders, all leaders, because I think we all struggle a little bit with the
Hmm.
having the tough conversations.
Yeah.
And maybe just to segue from what we were talking about before, what are some tried and true best practices for when you are going into tough conversations, when
Hmm.
you know things are going to be uncomfortable and you're going to have to face something? We all want things to be sunshine and roses every day. None of
Hmm.
us want to have conflict. I don't think anybody starts their day going, yay, I'm looking forward,
They're all litigators and they're crazy.
all right, exactly. But really, when you're going to go have a tough conversation, there's a team member who's,
Mhm.
not performing or whatever is going on. What are some best practices and tried and true principles that
Yeah.
guide you during these processes?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think I've seen so many different aspects of that, being a litigator, the conversations that you're having. Your goal is to treat people with respect, but it's to win a case for your client and to prove a point. What I do enjoy about the corporate world is that you can be more goal oriented and solution oriented. So when I know I'm going to have a difficult conversation, I try to go into that with goals in mind of what am I trying to get out of this? Am I trying to reach consensus? Am I trying to give someone coaching? Am I trying to give someone education? Think about what my goals are and how I can convey that to someone. You don't want to be chastising, you don't want to be accusatory. When you're in a professional setting, it really should generally be how can we reach consensus and come out of this able to move forward with each other. When I have those conversations, obviously, just trying to stay even toned, trying to stay factual, pausing, letting the other person hear what you're saying, reflect on it, respond to it, and then being open minded to receive what they say back and realize some of the way you've entered the conversation, some of the ideas or understanding you might have had about the situation. Maybe there was some context you were lacking that the other individuals just provided. So, staying open minded in the conversation, ready to hear what the other person has to say, ready to change course and to show them that, okay, I hear what you say. I'm going to kind of recalibrate what my ask is of you now that I have this additional context, I think can go really well. And I think, again, in some regards, going back to the conversation about respectful conversations, if something is getting heated, never being afraid to say, hey, it sounds like we both need to step away from this for a moment. Why don't we table this, pick it up again tomorrow, pick it up next week? Um, in a professional setting, we should be making decisions as much as possible, level headed, with respect, with decorum. And if things have gotten to a point where somebody is upset or frustrated or just trying to argue for the sake of argument, letting everybody take a step back from that from a moment, I think is always a good idea.
Yes, I agree with that very much. So you said a few things that I think are really critical and important. So staying open-minded to feedback, because sometimes we go into it not even knowing that we had maybe some part in something or whatever. Maybe there's some
Yeah.
accountability, and staying humble, because you've got to go into it without an ego, right?
Yes.
Like
Agree.
it because if you are going to reach consensus, that might mean you owning things, that might mean you switching your opinion because you have new information. I feel like so many times I've seen people just being so set in their ways, they're not willing to adjust no matter what. So I think what you
Hmm.
said is so critical. Stay agile, stay humble, open-minded, and really, what's the ultimate goal? The
Yeah.
goal is resolution, right?
If I was trying to win, I would have stayed in litigation, but I'm here in the business world because I really do value collaboration, reaching
Hmm.
consensus, moving forward together. That is definitely where my skill set is.
Okay, well, let me ask a question too, though. So here you are at TTI. You're 7 months in, you said.
Mhm.
What is it you there in this time? What are your aspirations for the
Yeah.
future?
Yeah. Thinking about what I've been working on and what I want to keep working on, we are a global company. I have amazing teammates throughout the world that I get to work with every week. So, continuing to build this global legal and compliance framework, giving our teammates the assets they need, the resources they need, the tools they need to serve our customers well, to be great partners to our suppliers and our manufacturers, to move quickly and agilely and respond to things in a flexible manner. Because when it comes to regulation, it's always adding, it's always changing. We just had elections in the EU. We're going to have elections here in the United States. Things might be interpreted differently after that. So that's been my goal while I've been here, is putting in place processes, workflows, putting in place resources, review guides for contracts, one pagers that tell you what to look for in an NDA, has been part of my goals. And when I think about my long term aspirations, I love being here at TTI, and my hope is to keep on growing and keep on moving up in leadership roles here as much as that makes sense. I hope to have a very, very long career here and be in more leadership roles as I continue.
Okay, so let's regroup on this. So where do you see, so you're coming from a couple different industries, you're here in the electronic component industry, just from different leadership roles. I'm asking this question now to different leaders because it's amazing the different answers you'll get. But what, where is it that you see people actually really in real life derail their careers or get
Mhm,
off track or
mhm.
sabotage themselves? What are those circumstances that you see so that people can listening can catch maybe themselves to say, ooh, maybe I have done that, or I do that, or I should be aware of this. What are
Yeah.
some of those pitfalls?
I think one thing I've seen a lot of people do, and it's not so much derailing a career, but it's missing out on opportunities in a career. I see a lot of people not take advantage of networking and building a supportive network. And I think those can be two different things. So networking, knowing people in your industry, knowing people in other industries. When I was an attorney in litigation, I made sure that I knew lawyers who didn't do litigation. I made sure I knew people in business roles. Every job I have had, I've never filled out an application. It's always been networking. It's always been somebody, I talked to somebody at the right time, right place, and they said, "Hey, here's this opportunity. Are you interested?" And it was something that I was interested in. I had a relationship already with whomever I was talking with, so that I knew that the move was going to be a good move and a good fit. So I see some people, either they get really insular and they only network with people really in their own industry or their own kind of part of the industry. If I only networked with other electronic lawyers, and distribution lawyers, it'd be a small set of people, but I wouldn't be expanding my skill set and my knowledge base. So when I think about that, kind of taking a few steps back to what you asked about, um, you never know where your career is going to take you. You don't know where your job is going to take you. You don't know where the industry, the economy, you don't know where anything is going to go, right? And when I think about my career and making sure I made those connections, there came a day where I realized, as much as I loved my firm and enjoyed working with my bosses at my aviation practice, I did not like litigating and I didn't want to do it anymore. And I was able to pivot because I had some friendships and relationships at an insurance brokerage. And they said, "Hey, we really like you. We don't really have a job, but we're just going to create it for you." Um, I didn't intentionally set out to change jobs, but I had spent those 5 years of that career making connections, making networking connections, and put myself in a good position. The same here at TTI. I found this role because I had maintained a connection with a former client and it worked out really well. So, what I try to tell a lot of people, and especially, I don't want to be too centric on the things that can affect women, but women often are the caregivers, the child rearers, the generals at home running the home base. And for a lot of women, that networking and that connection can really fall to the side. But when you think about a resilient career over the future, having options, and it's not just about what your next job is going to be, but do you end up in a position where you have a boss that isn't supportive? Do you end up in a position where a workplace that was good becomes not a good supportive environment for you anymore? Having those options and having the ability to move around doesn't come overnight. It's through maintaining those connections over the years. Um, I think the other thing that I really try to encourage other young professionals to do is, there's the networking network, but I started to allude to, there's your supportive network. Who are the other professionals, particularly for me, professional women who I can lean on, I can have candid conversations with, I can get advice from, I can get a gut check from. Hey, am I being ridiculous about this? Am I being overly sensitive about this? Am I not reading this situation the right way? Having that network of, your current, I remember a friend called it your board of directors. Who's your board of directors who you can bring ideas to, who are going to be honest with you with their feedback? And again, that takes time and it is so hard to carve that time out of our days. But that's how you build, in my opinion, a strong, resilient career, is a network, so that if you're ready to make a move, you've got some opportunities and ideas, and a network, a board of directors of people who are going to be your sounding board and be your supporter and be your champion throughout your career.
Oh man, excellent advice. We talk about that at Women Electronics. We talk about that personal board of directors and having that, those people you can go to that have your back, but they're willing to give you the truth,
Yes,
is
candid
essential. So
advice.
yes, not like your mother, your sister, people who are afraid to hurt your feelings. These people really give you, feedback. And I agree with you too about the networking, and that really segues into, maybe a question about women in electronics, but, you know, really developing that network. It could not be more important, more critical. And I
Yeah.
think people do get stuck in their little role wherever they sit in the channel, but it is an amazing, enormous channel filled with a lot of people. So it not only helps the individual, it's an investment of the organization, and it benefits the organization too. So it to me, it I agree with you 100% that people devalue that so much to the detriment of their careers. So I agree with you. So what do you think of, you've been with in the program now? I think when you got hired at DTI, I
Yeah, I think
met
I
you
joined
pretty.
we right away. Well, and I think it was John Archer who was like, "Hey, join this group. It's great."
Yeah, thank you, John Archer. But what is your take on women in electronics? You've been at other industries. What do you think feel a need for something like this? What do you
Mhm.
see in other industries compared to here? And how what do we do with something like this? Is this something that you feel is very valuable, or how do we
Mhm.
look at this moving forward?
Yeah, no, I think it's absolutely valuable. I think that um law, interesting enough, law as a profession over the centuries has a certain look and feel, right? You can turn on the TV and watch a movie or a TV show and see what the stereotypical lawyer looks like. And so those of us who don't fit the stereotypical lawyer profile have always in law created affinity groups. So whether that's women in law, African American women in law, Muslim women in law, just so many opportunities to network with people who are facing the same challenges that you're facing, who come from the same background, who can be supportive. Um, Law does such a great job of that, and I was really excited when I came to TTI and found that there was this organization for women in electronics. It's important to know where you can go to get that feedback, to meet like-minded people. One of the things I also really like about women in electronics, and I've seen this with every sort of affinity group that I've been part of, whether in law or insurance, is a lot of us are saying some of the challenges that a woman in electronics or a woman in law faces are challenges that everybody who doesn't fit the stereotypical mold is facing. So,
Yes.
how can we be more inclusive of
Yes.
everybody who's facing challenges? And then, how can we look at our male colleagues and teammates and say, here's how you can partner with us, but here's how we can partner with you. I think about like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. A lot of the cases that she took for gender equality were cases for men, where men were being discriminated against. And they were being told, one of them was a widower who was being denied social security benefits because he was a man and his wife had died. And she took that case and was like, hey, this doesn't make any sense, right? This person, just because they're a man, doesn't mean that they shouldn't be getting the benefit of this. So these types of groups that are saying, let's look for common ground, let's champion diversity and difference of thought and difference of background, that helps everybody, no matter what they are or how they present or what their background is. And I really like that about women in electronics, that it started from a position of, affinity group for women in this circle who need networking abilities and need those resources, but then saying, we can't do it alone. So let's bring in everybody else. Let's bring in people of different diverse backgrounds, people of different educational, different geographical, and let's bring in the men too, because we want them to be our partners in this. It's not women against men. It's not stereotypical against non traditional. It's how are we all going to partner together and value each other and treat each other with respect? How are we all going to take a principled stand and say, we are all in this together. We're all people. We're all professionals, and how can we keep encouraging that point of view?
You're my new spokesperson. You couldn't have said it any better. And I agree with that. I'm so glad that being a fresh perspective person coming into the industry that you see us that way, because that's definitely how we want to be seen as an organization that is inclusive and that actually just wants to, we really want everyone to fulfill their potential as a leader, as a human, as somebody in a critical role at TTI, which is one of our most valued distributors in the industry, and most well respected. What are some of those things in life? So I'd like to end with this question for everybody, because we really believe at Women Electronics is that humanity part of leadership we were talking. And I know TTI has the human component, right?
Yeah.
So what are those things in life, right? So what brings you the most joy, and what makes you rejoice in your spirit, and what are those things that make you cry as a human?
Well, I only cry when I'm angry. I don't know what that is. That's my emotional response to being angry about something. So if you see me crying, I'm mad. Um, and but thinking about joy, you and I have talked a lot before, and I don't have kids. I'm happy that way, but I have six beautiful nieces. I'm so attached to them. I love them so much. Three of them are triplets. I hang out with them every weekend, and uh, being with my family, being with my husband, being with my siblings, being with my dog, being with my friends, that personal connection is so important to me and gives me a lot of joy. Traveling with my husband, traveling with my friends, being able to experience new things, new cultures, new food with my friends and my family and the people who are important to me. That's what brings me joy. So, yeah, family, husband, friends, that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
That's what it's all about. Love that answer. And I am so appreciative that you took the time.
Thank you so much for including me today. Thank you for everything that Women Electronics and We United is working on for inclusivity, for diversity, for making all of us stronger together. I think it's a really important initiative.
Thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you. And we will look forward to seeing you soon.
All right, thank you.
Bye bye.